It is literally one of the biggest opportunities.
Because every day, people are turning to AI to discover things they want to browse, they want to buy.
Optimizing, the SEO side, really. How critical is that going to be now?
But it's important to bring the rest of the embedded experience to agents and allow merchants to capitalize on that.
I just think it's just such an exciting time for sort of conversions and the industry, but also a very exciting time for, really good SEO.
From a continuity, it's huge.
Welcome to the eCommerce One podcast again. I'm Richard Hill, and today we're talking about something that could completely change how online shopping works genuinely. My guest is Matthias Kleven, Head of Northern European Partnerships at Shopify. Matthias has spent years working at the intersection of commerce, technology, and partnerships. And in this episode, we're diving into one of the biggest shifts e-commerce has seen in over a decade. We're talking about Agentic commerce and Shopify's involvement with the Universal Commerce Protocol, or UCP as we like to refer to it, and what it means for how customers discover, evaluate, and buy products through AI-driven experiences. If you imagine a time where you and your customers go to an LLM, let's say Gemini, and searches for a particular product, and you would then go to the website, you don't need to do that anymore. You basically can buy from the LLM. Well, that time is right now. That's what this episode is all about. Possibly one of the most thought-provoking reality checks of where e-commerce is, not where it's going. Let's get into it.
Hi, Matthias, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No problem at all. Well, I'm very excited to get into things. Obviously, a very, very topical topic right now that we're going to dive into. So I'm very excited to get stuck in. But before we do that, I think it'd be great for you to introduce yourself and how you got into the world of e-commerce and all things Shopify.
Yeah. My name is Matthias Kleven. I'm currently the head of partnerships for Northern Europe at Shopify. How I got into e-commerce, it's I actually haven't been asked that question in a long time. So I'll try and tell the shortened version. I started working in technology and technology sales when I was back in San Francisco in 2013. And specifically during that time, I had about a 5-year stint in media. So when I was there, I was selling programmatic ads and working with quite a lot of merchants who inherently were on Shopify. So that's how it first kind of got onto my radar over time, and then got into SaaS sales. And then when I moved to London, actually, from San Francisco, is the second time I had lived here. That's when I started with Shopify. So I think it was from working with merchants selling media that I kind of got aware of it, and then landed the role and was one of the kind of early salespeople in the UK. And then now it's 7 years later, and e-commerce and commerce has been kind of everything that I live and breathe professionally. But I just love this space. I mean, obviously it evolves so much. Like what we're going to talk about today, I don't think any of us saw coming even a few years ago. And then also, like, I always say this, as a consumer, like we're all consumers. So we're all in commerce day in and day out. And I think we all know and love and can think of amazing experiences that we've had with some brands, and then sometimes not so great ones. But it's something that everyone can relate to.
Yeah, great. Well, so obviously on a day-to-day basis, you're working with, a team there at Shopify that are working with, and you are directly and have been directly with, hundreds, if not thousands of different merchants, seen a lot of things develop over the years. And obviously here we are sitting in 2026 with some, I would say, I think probably one of the biggest shifts I've seen. And that's not just a headline. I think that is literally, when you see what's happening, with AI and shopping with AI and agentic AI, I think it is literally one of the biggest opportunities, or it could be, obviously some early stuff, which we'll be talking about, but the ability to do some of the things that are literally, by the time we air this podcast, are live in around the world and over the coming weeks. So very, very exciting times and very exciting topic we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, I think primarily, I'd love to talk about Universal Commerce Protocol, or I think we'll refer to it as UCP because it is a bit of a mouthful. isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I agree. Universal Commerce Protocol is a mouthful, but so we'll refer to it as UCP. And one thing that we love in the commerce space is acronyms. So let's add another one.
Yeah, that's another one to the list. Another one we'll have to put in our ecom dictionary of acronyms. So UCP. I think a lot of listeners will be hearing this for the first time. UCP, never heard of that. Obviously, those that are sort of deep in the trenches, on in the agency space and in the SaaS space, no doubt, will be absolutely all over UCP, as we know. But for those that are maybe listening for the first time, back to the basics sort of thing, for people that are hearing about it for the first time, what is UCP?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if you're in the commerce space, if you have been on LinkedIn, it'd be hard to not hear about it. But I can definitely boil it down what it really is. So UCP, Universal Commerce Protocol, it's an open framework for how agentic platforms will interact with commerce platforms. And it was something that was been co-developed with Google and 20 other retailers. And if we really boil it down, what this means then in practice is it allows agents and agentic platforms to take into all the considerations that commerce platforms have. And specifically, what I mean by that is the checkout experience and being able to build a cart, to bring logic into that cart, like shipping details, like subscriptions, like discounts, all the way through to payments as well. And up to this date, that has not been the case. And this is an open framework. So this is not something that is limited to just Shopify, but any commerce platform or commerce business technically can put into practice or deliver to start using today.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? So you guys were one of 20 that have obviously been working with Google specifically to build this sort of, as they're calling it, Universal Commerce Protocol, this sort of new platform, new I guess a lot of people are sort of usually talking sort of in terms of sort of using different APIs to connect different things. But what we've got here, I believe, is sort of this key, I guess, is this word universal, this universal language, this universal tech that's been developed with, key platforms to make, the tech work together seamlessly. So, why do you think it's sort of, good timing for this sort of tech right now? Is it's obviously a lot happening in terms of AI search. We do we've done a lot of episodes on search, and we've got an event in a few days, and there's a very much focus on AI. But why do you think it's a really good time for this now?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting, like AI, obviously, in when I think of Shopify standards for a second. So we announced Sidekick, which is our agentic, basically our agentic offering within the Shopify admin. And that allows merchants to use an agent to help start to deliver faster outcomes for their business. So that was summer of 23. And if we think about AI in 23, it was just starting to bubble. And if we go forward now 3 years, it has evolved extensively. So during that period, what we're seeing, and I'll talk about this kind of from maybe a qualitative and a quantitative standpoint. So from the qualitative standpoint, what we're seeing is there's a shift from kind of keyword searching in the way that we're trying to find products to conversations. So it used to be, hey, I need black running shoes, or I need running shoes maybe for marathon. Now we're moving to conversations of people are going into these agents and saying, I'm running my first half marathon soon. How should I train, and what sort of kit or gear might I need? And then these agents are going and they're curating baskets and potentially, different lists of items that these consumers might look at. And from a quantitative standpoint, there's an amazing stat. So, and this is just from ChatGPT alone. So not thinking about Perplexity or Google Gemini or AI mode or anything else, but roughly about 2% of their queries every single day have some sort of commerce related search in them. Broken down, that's about 50 million queries happening a day around something around commerce. So these conversations are happening and at scale, and this is how people are starting to search, and it's how they're finding products. And so I think with that, discovery has been really big. But how do we continue to bring that? Because naturally at this moment, a lot of times you see the products, you read about them, but then you have to be redirected and then continue the process. And I think naturally as consumers, we're looking, how do we bring that into it? So I think it's because of where we've naturally got to now that people are really starting to use it for discovery, but it's important to bring the rest of the embedded experience to agents and allow merchants to capitalize on that, but also doing so in a way that they don't want to maintain and have to build out for all these different agents. They just want to use it as a channel, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, if we step back and just think, I'm just thinking about the guys that are listening now, just to sort of suck up that sentence or two. So, up until almost today, of course, 2% of transactions or 2% of queries, have got that intent, that commercial intent to look for and solve a problem that it will end up with a final discussion with your ChatGPT or whichever flavor you prefer, to take you to then go through and you end up on the site. But what we're saying now, you don't go to the website. In theory.
In theory, this will be all happening through the agent. So, you would go through and it carries the logic. So you find the product and the experience could be that then, okay, well, you add that cart to your basket. Maybe it could be that the merchant wants to say, okay, well, we want to do some cross sells. That could be a possibility. And then you get to checkout and, and then the logic carries through as we think of any checkout experience, you might have to enter shipping information to get to billing information, or you need to enter other details. And this is what can happen directly within these different agents. And so from a continuity, it's huge.
So seriously chop at the friction that going from one platform to another. But basically you're just staying in that one interface and you're able to buy without moving. So in terms of like potentially conversion rates and conversion rate shift, that's so exciting, isn't it? Literally going from what is known in the industry as a traditional conversion rate, where our conversion rate is going to go, because we're just chopping out that friction. It's going to be ridiculous, isn't it?
Now, you might be looking for an SEO boost, a down-to-earth digital PR campaign to share your story, or maybe just some straightforward technical help to amp up your performance. Now that's where eCom Now comes in. A partner that's all about making things easier for your online store. Our services cover everything from creating professional content for your e-commerce categories to refining your product descriptions. Now, whether you're just starting out or have been in it for a while, we're here to deliver real impactful results that add to your bottom line without unnecessary commitments. You can order one-off or multiple projects with a quick turnaround. Simply choose what you need.
Yeah, huge. And I think that's the thing is like you ideally want to capitalize as merchants on every potential opportunity you can. And when there's redirects happening, which it can be the case that it's needed sometimes, but you don't know, you could lose then potentially that interest and that could impact the conversion rate. So the more consistent, it's very similar to, like a payment redirect. It's not ideal. People kind of want to have that consistent flow.
Yeah. So I think you'll probably have a few people listening, in terms of like the technology side. Obviously that picture is incredible. It just literally we talk about on the podcast a lot what keeps you up at night as a business owner and as a founder, and this is the thing at the moment in terms of like opportunity, and and it sort of reminds me of it's very different technology, but it sort of reminds me when for example, like Google Shopping was frugal like 20 years ago, and it was free, and then it flipped overnight to a paid service, and the industry was like, oh, and then the opportunity that produced, and created. Obviously, initially, some people see it as maybe an issue. Oh, all this tech, how are we going to figure all this out? There's all this technology. But obviously, in reality, it's, if you're set up correctly with Shopify, it's going to be part of already, isn't it? I think literally rolling out as we speak, part of out of the box sort of integration. How sort of set up is it at the moment? Would you say is it ready? It's literally ready to go in certain parts of the country, or in certain parts of the world? Sorry.
Yeah, so UCP, I think there's kind of like there was 3 pretty big announcements that kind of came out at NRF in New York when we kind of announced all this a couple almost a couple weeks ago now, which is wild to say. I'm not sure where January has gone. The Universal Commerce Protocol, like that framework, the ability for any merchant to build and to bring that experience to agents, that is globally available. Now, the other thing that there's two other big things that we announced as well. And one of them was Agentic storefronts. And this is for Shopify merchants. I'll delve in a second on that. And then the other is the Shopify catalog, which is really big. And this is actually opening up the Shopify catalog to non-Shopify merchants. So maybe to go into the direct Agentic storefronts first, because you're kind of mentioning like what's already integrated, what does this mean? So for Shopify merchants, and this is right now just available in the US. So it's for merchants in the US who are selling to US customers. But by the end of this month, what they will be able to do is ChatGPT rolled out at the end of last year, being able to do this now with Google Gemini, Google AI mode, and Microsoft Copilot. Shopify merchants, they are agentic ready. And what I mean by that is they go into their Shopify admin and they will be able to toggle and manage these different agents as channels. And they can choose, and with that, choose which products they want to have on these. Are they wanting to be on them or not? So they have complete control over this. So with that, it's inherently there, and that's how we're kind of thinking about it. Is these agents are a channel, and anytime there's new channels of commerce, Shopify historically has been a pretty big front leader in that. If I think of like social stuff, Shopify was at the forefront, but that's there. And then the other side is the catalog. So for the first time ever, we are opening up the Shopify catalog to non-Shopify merchants. Again, this is right now on the US only, but it allows merchants not on Shopify. They can upload their product catalog to the Shopify catalog, and then they can go and sell into these different agents. So that is a pretty huge shift in anything I've seen at Shopify since I've been here for 7 years.
So this is not paid ads, is it? This is a separate channel altogether. This is correct. Obviously, that's some people may be confusing that you need a product feed in the merchant feed, as in a Google merchant feed. This is your product catalog in your Shopify store.
Yep.
And then sort of toggling and saying, yes, include it in here or don't include it, sort of thing. Yeah. And then no doubt as time evolves, which maybe we'll come to towards the end, there'll be other platforms added. Obviously, UCP is specifically Google's tech, but they're obviously opening it up to obviously Gemini is the obvious one. AI mode is their own, but then the ability to then use it, cross network. Yeah. Very exciting,
and like
isn't it?
It's being picked up as well by this is how Microsoft Copilot's being powered by Shopify checkout pieces. So I think the future of what UCP as a framework can offer is really big, and that's also why it's a big part of why we're doing this as open standard and not something that I think just Shopify is owning, because that's really important.
Yeah. So then it must come back to then in terms of obviously, okay, you've toggled, you've clicked it on. Yes, we want to show, but obviously you've then got to make sure, just like optimizing for SEO, optimizing feeds for paid ads, that your product catalog is optimized to show. So what would you say to the listeners on that? Because I think we talk about optimizing feeds for paid ads, at half of our episodes. Obviously we're an ads agency in the background, performance agency, but optimizing the SEO side, really, in reality, the organic, the content, the descriptions, and so forth and so forth. How critical is that going to be now?
I mean, huge. I think, like you said, you've talked to maybe other partners and people on the podcast about kind of the discovery side, and that is a huge piece of this. So I think what I would recommend, and this is where two things. One, I would work with partners who know this and who are kind of at the forefront. The term I think that's being thrown around at the end of last year and this year was like generative engine optimization. If I boil it down, is you need to think about how your consumers are going to be talking to these agents and the sort of questions they may ask. And so with that, they might say, hey, I want to look for a running shoe that's great for 10K kilometers, that's within this price range and can ship to me in under a week. If these agents don't have information like your shipping information, your return policy, your different payment providers that you call out, they will not be able to surface as much. So it's really about making sure your catalog, but also like your FAQs and all this stuff that would be considered within the buying cycle is readily accessible and really set up for these agents. And so when you do that, it will help. And Shopify, again, we're set up to allow our merchants to do this, but you definitely need to consider. And I think we're still all figuring it out. It's not all solved for, but at least the infrastructure is there for merchants to capitalize on that now.
Yeah. I think, you hit the nail on the head there. If you're at the end of the day, whatever you're selling, these queries, as they have been for, for several years now, they're expanding, these sentence queries or these sentence, grab my phone. Hey, ChatGPT, this is me probably this afternoon. I'm at the gym this afternoon. We've got a few things that we're working on. I'll sit or stand on the treadmill and, and I'll be back and forth with ChatGPT. What do you do with this? How do we do this? What do you think of this? Obviously, it's recalling that information from, different sources, and we're going back to that sort of GEO, SEO analogy. Ultimately, if you've got the right content on your website, so going back to things as simple as, going to those products, do you really cover thoroughly those FAQ questions answer? Do you really have some good guides on your website? Are your categories just a block of 16, 24, 48 products, or do they really cover, the different types of users, sort of questions, thoughts? What guides do you have? FAQs. What content do you have? Because ultimately, these AI different platforms have got to decide who to put in there. And obviously, if you've got the content in the first place, but also, you are mentioned on other authoritative sites. So mentions are really, really, used to be sort of mentions, digital PR, but mentions of brands is really a signal that a lot of the agentic AIs are really, really, really pulling on. So it's I just think it's just such an exciting time for sort of conversions and the industry, but also a very exciting time for, really good SEO, because ultimately if your site is optimized, you're going to have a good head start. And obviously the way that your sort of page builders and so forth do it now, it makes it so easy, or, a lot easier to build in those different areas on the, on the product pages, on the categories and so forth. Yeah.
100%.
So I think a couple of questions that I think will be sort of, will be on people's minds. So obviously we go to Gemini, we're doing our 10K. I haven't done a 10K yet. Have you done a 10K?
Well, normally I'm a pretty avid runner. I've been a bit off my game over the past few months because my little one, I'm still figuring out the schedule and where to fit it in. But yes, normally love 10Ks. I've run one half marathon. I had to let everybody know that I was doing it at the time.
Of course. Did you do it? Sponsorship everywhere.
Yeah. No, I did. But yeah, so I do like running. So actually in this case, like I wouldn't be asking as much, but yes, if I was getting back into many different activities, I'll probably ask things.
So no doubt, as it stands, you would go to the website, you go to your Shopify store. So just for a moment, we'll ignore UCP for 1 minute. Assume the scenario as it was last week, if you like. We've searched and we've found the great content on ChatGPT that's led us to our store. And then we've gone to the store, we've purchased the product, had a great experience. But then obviously quite a lot of merchants are using different tech, different external tech stacks, 3 or 4 or 5 subscriptions for maybe their email and their, post-purchase experience. Now in the UCP world, we have now bought without going to the store. What happens to any sort of existing tech, and that sort of maybe post-purchase experience? Is there any change there much?
Not really. And I think like now the conversation of like what will happen post-purchase and how will customers maybe go back and use like Agentic for post-purchase stuff, like that's a whole other topic. And that's interesting. But I think maybe kind of what you're alluding to is like, how does this relate to, does it replace current tech stack? How is it different from an API? Like, is some of that. And I'd say like ultimately what merchants should think of is UCP is, now an agent facing standard layer that sits on top of the APIs, integrations, the tech stack that merchants already use. So it's not a replacement for admins, storefront, checkout APIs, etc. Think of it as a layer above API. So it's kind of like the handshake before the transaction actually happens. Because at the end of the day, APIs are endpoints. So they're point-to-point connections. UCP is like a universal adapter to it all.
Yeah, got you. So it's connecting what exists already, and that so that those connectors will just continue to develop. Because I think there'll be, as always, how's this going to affect this? How's this going to affect this? But obviously, ultimately, you know, we want to still make sure those sort of post-purchase experiences are thorough, you know, and that there are, you know, opportunity to, you know, that there's no issues with that post-purchase experience. So obviously you mentioned that, you know, the US is happening, so forth. You know, what's the sort of what are we seeing in terms of sort of UK? Have you got any sort of insights into when things will be rolled out in the UK? More so?
No hard timelines as of yet. I think we're obviously working with partners closely to understand and see how we can roll it out to the UK and more of EMEA. But TBC, I think in general, like with a lot of this AI stuff, a lot of it's still unknown, and we're kind of seeing where it goes through. But it's that want to. And I think that's why we're still proud to come and like speak about it and kind of know, because this will be, I think, where we get there. But it's pretty common practice too that I've seen that a lot of times stuff will usually kind of lead in America first for various reasons. Yeah. And then the UK usually follows pretty shortly after. I just don't have hard timelines.
Yeah, no, I thought that might be the answer, but I thought you might have had the email this morning or whatever. So, but I think by the time whoever's listening right now is probably live in reality, because this is how these things work, isn't it? You know, it's crazy, like you said right at the beginning. You know, like 3 years ago, we're like, oh, this AI thing. You know, I remember coming back from a conference and somebody mentioned this word GBT, and I was like, oh, that just sounds just crazy, you know. And I came back to the office, and all the guys are like, oh no, it's the end, it's the beginning of the end, sort of thing. You know?
Robots are taking over.
Yeah. They're like, no, there was genuinely, you know. And then soon after that, I was like, right, I'm going to get you all on account. Let's see how we can do X, Y, you know, improve things and so forth. And then what we did about a year ago to sort of embrace all these, you know, all the sort of technologies is we ran something we refer to as the AI games in our agency. So we gave everybody 3 months, split them into teams, 4 different teams. So across performance. So performance for us is more on the ad side, SEO, operations, and sales and marketing. So sort of 2 external departments, 2 internal, really. And gave everybody sort of X amount of time, you know, over those 3 months to spend time on different platforms, you know, but they ultimately then present to the whole company what they built, you know, and gave them access to one of our or 2 of our tech guys to help them build something, whether that be in NAN or whatever it may be. And they spent the day presenting their findings, and then that was sort of a massive shift in our business where everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is just like incredible what we can do for clients, what we can do for the agency just by embracing, adapting things, you know. So I think this specifically, you know, is going to be one of those things that people are like, oh, blimey, you can, or maybe, you know, they're going to get their phone. Oh, you can now buy from the chat. Oh, I'm not sure about that. What do you think? You know, what do you think? This adoption piece, you know, literally you're going to go on your phone today, literally, maybe, you know, if you're in the right part of the world, and you're going to go and you're going to go click, click, click. Oh, it's done.
Yeah.
So getting the mindset shift, what do you think people are going to think about that sort of initial, you know, I guess we're going to see it on every news channel, literally within days as well, to make it more, you know, as it becomes more mainstream.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like anything, I guess maybe if we think about like maybe, and this is me extrapolating for a second. I remember when in London back in 2008, like, you know, everything used to be the Oyster card. And it was just when Barclays was starting to announce that you could use their cards to tap onto the tube. And I remember seeing it and I was like, what? No, like you use an Oyster card. And then actually I left the UK shortly after that, but then I came back like 3 years later, and it's like everything was contactless. People are like, why would you buy an Oyster? Why do you need an Oyster card? So I use that as an analogy because I do think like, there will be early adopters like everything. I think there will be people like, if you or me could go through it, if you're in the States, you'd probably just try to go through the experience because you want to see what it's like. But I think apparently people will kind of come across it and it will pick up because, all of a sudden these AI agents, remember, this is also, it's trying to do it programmatically. So people I think are going to be used to, okay, I've seen the product, I do this. But if it prompts saying, hey, yes, I see these things, would you like me to build a basket for you? That's going to change. All of a sudden you're like, yeah, because that's the other thing is like all these agents, they prompt you as to a follow-up. So I think it will, once everything's kind of rolled out, I think adoption will happen pretty quickly, but at the same time, it is still a channel. There will be people who still go, no, I want to go to the store. You know what? No, it's like people say, yeah, I can buy online. I want to feel it. I want to see it in retail. It's, so I think it will get picked up. I think my view is it will be adopted pretty darn well, but there will always be people who are like, it's not for me. I'm going to go to these other ways.
Yeah, I think from a merchant standpoint, when they see the conversion rate, it's got to be so much better. It just has to be. So for merchants,
I think so.
And then I think that shift then is going to be, in terms of, it sounds like I've set this question up, but just for people that are doing great SEO, they're going to be, it's going to be ridiculous because ultimately you want to, rank's the wrong word, but you want to be visible in the different LLMs. So if you are very visible in LLMs, therefore your products are going to show in LLMs, and with 1-2 clicks, you've got to purchase as a merchant from an LLM. So in terms of investing in that LLM visibility, where are you seen? If somebody types in, if you went to ChatGPT now and said, talk to me about my store, if you were looking for running shoes for my 10K, would you recommend me? And if it says no, then well, why wouldn't you recommend me? Well, it's because you don't cover this, you don't cover that, you don't cover this, you haven't got a guide on this, and these 3 firms have got a community talking about this, and this. They've got 20 guides to do with this. They actually have their own marathon or their own 10K that they sponsor, and so okay, and they're mentioned here, and here. It gives you a bit of insight as a merchant. Just by discussing with those LLMs, if you like, what they're looking for, give you some insights into what you need to look at, because it is only literally a few months away where, I think most merchants that are proactive and obviously looking at their marketing stack, on a consistent basis, are going to be going to events. You can't really go to an event without talking about the GEO or whatever it is, but or whatever sort of you want to call it. But ultimately, it's damn good SEO is the short version. I think there is some caveat. A lot of people will be screaming at me now. It's not the same, and there is things obviously you need to do, but ultimately, it's doing good work. Very, very, very exciting times for old school SEOs and SEO agencies and content and link building and digital PR and sort of mentions and things like that. So where do you maybe got some insights from the top, but where do you see this going? We've got, it's literally just launched, but let's say even, 6-12 months from now, have you got any insights, or anything maybe specifically that Shopify have got planned?
Yeah. So I think, like, as we mentioned at the top of the conversation, like, this is a platform shift. We are living through something that is like, next to like the .com boom and like the internet is drastically changing. So I think agentic commerce, it's a new world order. Future internet commerce will happen through some sort of agents or AI enhanced services in some way. Because every day people are turning to AI to discover things like we have been talking back and forth. They want to browse, they want to buy. And I think, agentic commerce in 2025 is kind of, we set a vision at Shopify to build for the foundation. And in 26, with like the launch of UCP and agentic storefronts and catalog, like we're accelerating that vision. So we're really on it. What it will look like in the future is, I think, whether people want to be through the various purchasing experiences, whether it's like embedded checkout in apps, whether it's web-based commerce flows, whether it's agentic partners using UCP to get the flexibility on any shopping experience to be there. On top of this, I think, this framework, it doesn't just have to be for commerce. It can be for various online transactions. So I think that's, to me, is where we could potentially see this going, is like, outside of just commerce, how can this evolve into anything that be purchased across various verticals? Because conversations can happen about any sort of products or trips or movies, like you name it, and it could come there. So I think adoption is going to tell a lot of it, but I think that's probably the biggest thing that I think I see in maybe the next 6 to 12 months is what are the unique experiences that people first build and put into these agents, but then how does it evolve into other verticals as well?
Yeah. Very exciting. I think what we're going to have to do, you know what I'm going to say, you're going to have to come back on 12 months.
Yeah. Who knows what it will be like.
Yeah. I mean, it is like, I could just see, like, from an agency standpoint, just like, the whole sort of agentic shopping department, sort of literally, like we have in our agency, specific people that are building, AI tools, we've got and some consultants that work with us, permanently on that side, and they're building tools for predominantly our SEO department and some of our internal tools, a little bit of paid ads as well. But just to really, this is obviously just a massive, I see it 100% as this ridiculous, as you put it, almost like a once in a lifetime opportunity, or, this massive shift that, I'm really excited, very much want to get the agency behind, known for ultimately. And I think it's just really going to help merchants get better conversion rates from admittedly at the moment, we've gone from, if we sat here 3 months ago, it's maybe like 0.5% of search is LLMs. Now you're probably getting, 2-3%. But then when you really start looking at the data, it's not really about that percentage of search. It's the percentage of intent and conversion, really, because you've got a lot more intent and a lot more reality of higher conversion rates when people really find what they want with whatever agentic tool you're looking with. So the conversion rates are so much higher. So I think the acceleration of the conversion and the revenue that it's going to generate for merchants is just going to be, when we sit here in a year and talk about it, merchants are going, oh yeah, I get about 15% from LLMs and from via the UCP and the tech around sort of buying directly from LLMs. I think the shift and the speed is going to be, like it. If you said 2 years ago to any merchant, are you using ChatGPT to create any content? No. What's that? It's literally like, and everyone's using, and it's now ingrained in all the tools, sort of thing. So I think the speed and shift of change now but it'd be interesting with this initial adoption. I think when we come to do our first purchase, or our customers do. Very exciting. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like we could cover a lot more ground, but I think we've teased enough out there with to the audience. I think there's a lot more coming. Obviously, we can talk about in the coming months. So thank you for coming on the show. For those that want to find out sort of more about what you do at Shopify, and Shopify is what's the best way to do that?
If anyone has questions, they can reach out to myself. But then I think I would just go to our site. Like, everything is well indexed. We are well set up for obviously AI and everything. But I would go there as a starting point. Then also just like search, you can have the questions within your different agentic platforms. One thing to always notice, sometimes it can be a little out of date, depending on where it's pulling from. So sometimes we're the source, but you can come and speak to us and it's free to find a lot.
Yeah, I think if you want the sort of the latest sort of overview and some of the more technical specs on UCP, shopify.com/UCP has got a really good sort of explains it very, very well. Well, I like to finish every episode with a book recommendation. Do you have a book to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah. I think for me, this might have been referenced on, I'm not sure if it's been referenced before, but I am a big fan of Simon Sinek. Find Your Why, Know Your Why. To me, I read that book initially when I became a lead, and it's a really simple concept, I think, but it's so true. It's like, why are you doing this? Because if you don't have that, then the how and the what just really, it don't matter. And I think that's in both life, but really in business. And that book to me broke down so much, like why some businesses have been so successful and others not. And I think when I think about it in the construct of like Shopify, our why is so clear on wanting to make commerce better for everyone. The how right now is very much, I think, with AI, but and it evolves, like your why will be there. So it's an older one, I think, is maybe as a reference, but I could not recommend enough. And he's got a couple different iterations for how it could be used for individuals, but also businesses.
Brilliant. We'll link that up in the show notes. And great reference. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And no doubt we will see each other soon.
Definitely. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast, so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.